The Small Business Rundown is the official podcast of the National Federation of Independent Business, the member-driven voice of small business. NFIB and our members advocate to keep America's small businesses strong and independent in Washington, D.C., all 50 states, and the nation's courts.
Welcome to the Small Business Rundown, a bi-weekly podcast with information on independent businesses' victories and challenges in Washington, D.C. and state capitals. I'm Adam Temple, NFIB Senior Vice President of Advocacy. Today, I'm talking with two NFIB members who traveled here to Washington, D.C. to attend NFIB's annual fly-in event on Capitol Hill. April Meier and Shad will be discussing how the 20% small business deduction has affected their small business and what it will mean if it expires this year. Also, Jeff Brabant, NFIB Vice President of Federal Government Relations, will also discuss his expectations for congressional action on this crucial issue. To start, can both of you guys just introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your business and where you are today? April, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm April Meier, and I own a business called Positively Scrumptious, and it's located in Crestview, Florida. And what we do there is we are a holistic pet store. So we deal with food, treats, supplements, shampoos, and also keeping our community pets healthy.
Outstanding. Shad, how about you?
Yeah, good morning. So I own Shad's Custom Countertops up in Maine, and we are a wholesale countertop manufacturer selling to kitchen dealers, lumberyards, and home centers.
All right, and we're here to talk about the small business deduction. You'll be talking to lawmakers over the course of your trip about what it's meant for your business. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that. Shad, start with you. What is the small business deduction, the 20% small business deduction meant for your business?
So it's helped us maintain affordable health insurance, wage increases, and consistent 401k contributions despite rising costs. It's allowed us to reinvest in our equipment and community contributions as well.
April, as far as your business, how has the small business deduction impacted you?
Well, it has allowed us to hire additional employee. I've also upgraded to a larger location to help serve our community because where we were at before it was a little bit smaller. We also purchased a large freezer, which was quite an extensive cost for our business, and that allowed us to bring in frozen foods for our customers. We've also done a lot of things in our local community, such as during Hurricane Michael, we were able to put about 8,000 pounds of food down to locations that, weren't getting any help. We also sent stuff to people in the Carolinas from Hurricane Helene. And within our community, we also do provide food to our animal services and our police department at my cost. Without those tax deductions, we probably would not be able to do any of those things.
Before we continue, we'll take a quick break.
For the resources and information that most impact your business, join NFIB today to see how we continue to fight, advocate, and champion the best interests of your small business. These resources are available at nfib.com/join us.
Welcome back. April, you were talking about some of the positive impacts that the small business deduction has had on your business. On the flip side, what would the impact be if Congress allows the deduction to expire at the end of this year?
Well, sir, honestly, that 20% has carried a part-time employee, and I fear that that part-time employee probably, we would have to let them go. And unfortunately, in the town that I live in, jobs are not readily available, not plentiful, where that employee, he's just a young kid. He's doing a great job for our business, and I'd really like to retain his employment with us.
Shad, same question to you. What would the impact be if this thing goes away?
Well, there'd be a possible financial strain, obviously, by losing the 20% small business deduction. We might be forced to reduce benefits, cut wage increases, or limit reinvestment. And then, our employees and their families rely on these benefits.
Yeah. So why did you decide to come to Washington, D.C. this week to talk to lawmakers about the issue?
I'm here to protect our employees, ensure that small business stays competitive, and and standing up for fair tax policies.
April, why did you decide to take the time away from your business to travel here to talk about what's going to happen if Congress fails to act?
Well, these are very important issues. I know in my town, when I speak to a lot of other business owners, they have no idea that this is coming. I mean, fortunately for me, I've had my business since 2013. So this, as it came about, I was like, wow, we've got a little bit of extra money. We can do some, really cool things within our city. However, a lot of these business owners that started their business after the fact, when that came into effect, that I think seriously they're not going to realize how much 20% is going to mean, and it could really shutter a lot of small businesses across the country. So I think those issues of talking to lawmakers on their behalf means a lot to me and to a lot of our their constituents in our locales.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we find ourselves often having to remind lawmakers, you said that you had some extra money. It's not really having extra money, it's that you were able to keep more of your own money and not send it to Washington. That's what you're able to do as far as the benefits that Shad's talking about, or retaining part-time employees and things like that.
You're exactly right, because I've talking to a lot of the business owners, not only for myself, they didn't put that money into their pocket. They put it basically back into our communities, and whatever that was, whether they upgraded equipment, because those are necessary things you have to do in businesses no matter what. They added that. They added, additional benefits for their employees. And those are things that possibly will go away if we don't have this.
Shad, you were nodding along with regards to not putting the money back in your pocket but into the community. Or has that been your perspective in Maine as well?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, over the last 4 to 5 years, we've increased our charitable and nonprofit contributions by an average of 62% over the past 5 years. So with the pass-through deduction, it's enabled me, like I said, our bonuses at the end of the year, I split amongst the employees, and our bonuses are like 3 to 6% of their wages was their bonus at the end of the year. And then we probably support 20 different charities in Maine. So when that passed, this is what I've been able to do with the deduction. It's really is to give back to the employees and give back to our community, and reinvest in some equipment that we've needed in the manufacturing facility as well.
Yeah. Jeff, we'll take a look at the landscape and expectations here on Capitol Hill. Why is it important for small business owners to attend events like this, like the NFIB Fly-In, and share their story with lawmakers?
It's a great question, Adam. As a lobbyist for NFIB, when I go in, I can talk macroeconomic data and big picture numbers, and I'm another suit telling a story to a member of Congress. When a local small business owner comes in and tells them exactly how it's going to affect their local communities that members of Congress live in, it's a lot more powerful. Right? They eat at that diner, they go to that convenience store, they get their countertops installed by Shad. They're very familiar with these local businesses, and it paints a real vivid picture of exactly what's going to happen. Whereas, macroeconomic data is great and it supports our facts, so it's not the same picture.
And Jeff, do you have any updates on the legislation to make the deduction permanent?
Right now, it's passed the House, and the deduction in the House bill has been increased from 20 to 23%, indexed for inflation and made permanent, which, as of today, is a huge win. Now we're a long way from home. This still has to get through the Senate. This still has to be signed by the president. So while we're in great position today, there's still a number of steps left. We hope in the next few months this will be wrapped up and be a great one for small business owners.
And Shad, what would you tell other small business owners about getting involved on an issue like this? Where should they start?
Where should they start? Well, they should start by being a member of the NFIB. And then, it's because of this organization is why I've been involved and been coming to the DC to the fly-ins for I don't even know how many years now. Really, it starts at getting involved, which is hard as a business owner, going through the day-to-day, the grind, your employees, the paperwork, it's hard to carve out time and think that this is important, but it really is. I feel coming on the Hill with this fly-in every June of every year since before COVID, I've seen it make a difference with our legislators. I've seen them go from a hard no to maybe to supporting an issue. So I know going in and sending the emails and, going into their office makes a difference. And then, like I said, as a small business owner, get involved. I would sign up and be a member of the NFIB and then start there, because you guys are a great resource. I mean, the stuff that you give me, information, emails, the issues, the alerts is great. And it's not too much information. And the emails are short and concise, clear and concise, and it's really good. And that's how I know about this stuff. Because, if we talk about beneficial ownership a little bit later in the podcast, I think the number is 83% of businesses don't even know about that. And then you could face, a $10,000 fine and 2 years in jail. It's like crazy. And then how would you know?
Yeah.
So biggest thing, get involved.
And then our job is to make sure you are equipped to tell your story to members of Congress. April, you'll be doing that tomorrow. What do you think is the message that you'll be sending to the members that you meet with?
I think the message that I will bring to them is that it's not just my business. It's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of businesses. Obviously I'm from the state of Florida, so our legislators need to hear from us. We make votes in our state to put them where, who and what we need them to do for us. And if we have a collective voice where this is impacting other small businesses besides my own, that's the voice that I want to bring to talk to those legislators about. And I really think that being a member of NFIB has given me that voice to do that. All too often, prior to being a member of NFIB, I would write to my congressman, and I didn't know if my voice was getting heard or not. But the message that NFIB sends to me, or even there's new things that come down that I didn't know anything about because I'm busy running my business. Right. So the information that NFIB gives me, and also gives me a voice to send that information to them with my own caveat on there and what it means and how it impacts me, is powerful. I think that's a very powerful message that we bring to Congress. And when we go there and we speak to those people that we voted to do the will of the people, I think they need to still hear from us, because sometimes they get a little bit sidetracked on their jobs too, and they think this might be a good thing. And I think sometimes we just need to rein them in a little bit.
A little perspective.
So my voice comes from a perspective of not just my own business, because before I come to these events, I also sit down with other businesses and ask them, what does this do to your business? How does that impact you? Because not all the issues will impact my business, but it impacts a great many other businesses. So that's the reasoning for me to come to this. And fortunately for me, I have good people who I have employed, and they can watch the business for me while I'm gone. So I appreciate them too.
Jeff, Shad mentioned beneficial ownership. Are there any other issues that you anticipate will be discussed with lawmakers this week?
That's the second issue we'll be talking to lawmakers about this week, the beneficial ownership reporting requirements. We're going to have extensive discussions with lawmakers. And to give a quick background and bring you up to speed on where we are, earlier this year there was a deadline for LLCs with 20 or fewer employees, just those LLCs with 20 or fewer employees, not the larger businesses, to file their beneficial ownership information with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They had a deadline this spring. Luckily, right before that deadline, the Trump administration looked at it and said, the penalties for this are 2 years in prison and up to $10,000 in fines. I don't know if this is a great idea, and they spared American small businesses. They said, this is supposed to get drug traffickers, money launderers, all these bad guys. Why are honest, hardworking American small businesses required to do this? They said, let's exempt American small businesses and just make foreign-owned small businesses who are more likely to be in that category file. However, just because this president made a regulation does not mean we have permanent relief. As we have seen with many regulations from the president earlier this year, things can change in the courts, or a future administration could snap this right back into effect for 32.6 million small business owners. So one of the things that I think NFIB members will be telling the Hill is, this is a great job by the Trump administration, but the job isn't finished. You need to permanently codify this into law so we're not hung out to dry from a future administration.
And that would provide some much needed certainty, and that's one thing that we hear a lot about, whether it's related to tax planning or beneficial ownership or you name the issue. Small business owners are looking for certainty. April, what do you think members of Congress need to know about when it comes to a business like yours where you need to have some sort of certainty to be able to plan for the future?
Well, first of all, when I looked at the beneficial ownership thing, if anything in your business changes, you don't have a very huge window of opportunity to be able to change that. Well, as a small business owner, you end up being the tax accountant, you end up being the manager, you end up being the person who's making the phone calls out to customers, so on and so forth. You're the one that has to go do the bank run. You don't have time in your business to really possibly stay up on every single thing all the time, and time gets by you very quickly. You're dealing with customers. So with the beneficial ownership, I don't think that that's going to deter the drug dealers, the other businesses that are not legitimate. As a small business owner, the IRS already has information. My state, local, and city all has information about my business. But the thing that bothers me the most about the BOI information is that anybody could get into that database and get your information. Right now, those other agencies that I mentioned, they all have to have a subpoena to get in there. That, to me, is a breach of security. But do I really think that the BOI is going to prevent those people who are not playing by the rules? No, I absolutely do not think that that's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's an often unspoken side of this equation, is that it doesn't just affect the small business owners, but their employees. And then you mentioned even families, which is something that I don't think we hear a lot about. At the same time, a lot of small business owners did file this information to the tune of a couple million, Shad, to this database that, as April mentioned, is wide open for lots of people to access without a subpoena. I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. What would be your message tomorrow with regards to the folks that have already filed this information? The government already has it.
My message would be, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. Then it was like, oh my gosh, we got to do it. And then we're not going to do it. And then finally President Trump come in and, and now we've got to stay. For me, it was privacy concerns. They don't need my information. If they need to know who owns my LLC, all they got to do is contact the state. You file your LLC with your state that your business is located. The state has that information. It was something that didn't need to be done, in my opinion. And then why did it just target, there's so many LLCs out there, and then what did Jeff say? Only LLCs 20 employees or less? It's crazy. So, and basically April covered it pretty well. It's really your privacy concerns, data protection, and then the unequal application. Large corporations are exempt. It's just, I could go on and on. But
I'm sure, yeah. No, that makes sense. We've taken some of your time today that we really appreciate it. Is there anything else before we go that you feel like you need to add?
I'd just like to add one additional thing about that BOI information. My message to Congress tomorrow will be to delete the whole file, because it's unfair and it's unjust to small businesses. The file needs to be deleted because, I think it was an unnecessary thing for small businesses to do, and it kind of it's targeting. They didn't ask corporations to do that. They didn't ask, some other types of businesses to do that. Government contractors, they didn't ask them to do that. Why are you picking on small businesses? And that information is not protected. So, in my opinion, the database needs to just be destroyed.
How about you, Shad? Anything else?
The one thing I guess I missed going on the 20% small business deduction, that when I go up on the Hill tomorrow, that I'm going to, on the legislators that are not in support of this, is it was unequal treatment because when the Tax Cut Jobs Act in 2017 passed, they made the large corporation, the top corporate rate was 35%. And then when they passed the TCJA, it lowered it to a flat 21%, and that's permanent. They got a tax cut from 35% if they're in the top rate to 21%, and then ours expires. And I got to figure out a way to try to get that to, theirs was permanent, and let's level the playing field with small business, because that's a big number, 35% to 21%. So that's what I really got to practice and rehearse today to have a good, short and sweet message going in tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, it's a crucial message that you guys will be taking to the Hill. We appreciate you doing that, taking time away from your business and joining us today on the podcast.
I would just like to thank NFIB, though, for the invite to come and have the opportunity to be able to go and see my legislators and talk to them about these issues. So I'm very appreciative of that, and for all that the work that NFIB does for everyone across the country, and also the legislators. I thank you very much for opening your schedule and allowing us to come and speak with you in person. That's very important, I think, on behalf of small businesses in the U.S.
Well said, April. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. I really appreciate the time.
And thank you too, Shad.
You're welcome.
You'll find a link in the show notes to add your voice to amplify the efforts of April, Shad, and all of the other small business owners attending meetings on Capitol Hill this week as part of NFIB's Fly-In. And now I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on today's Small Business Rundown. We'll be back every 2 weeks bringing you news and analysis from Washington, D.C. and state capitals so that you, whether you're a small business owner or a supporter of one, can continue to blaze a trail.
The Small Business Rundown is brought to you by NFIB, the voice of small business. You can find us at nfib.com and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.